Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you how I made this taper jig. I made this jig to replace this metal death trap that I've been using for the last few years. It has no good hold down support and keeps your fingers close to the blade as you pass through. The new taper jig is very easy to make, made out of just some plywood, a couple of clamps from Harbor Freight, and some turn screws that I picked up from Lowe's. It only takes about an hour to make, so stick around and I'll show you how I did it. I'll start by cutting two pieces of plywood that are 12 inches wide by 30 inches long. The first piece will be for the base. The second piece I'll rip two 4-inch wide boards out of it to act as the fence and the spacer that sits underneath the fence. Next I'll cut the fence and the spacer to a final length of 26 inches. Here I'm marking in 4 inches from each end and 2 inches from each side. This is where I'm going to put the slots for the adjustable fence. I'll also mark out for the slots that I'm going to put on the adjustable fence and the spacer that goes underneath it. These slots are going to be 3 inches long, starting from 1 inch in on each end of the board. With the base clamped to my workbench, I'm ready to start routing out the slots. I use a 1/4 inch spiral bit and make multiple passes to break all the way through the board. After finishing the slot on the first end, I'll reposition the base on my workbench and then route the second slot. Once I've finished cutting the grooves in the base, I'll flip it over to the bottom side. I change over to a 1/2 inch router bit so that I can route a 1/4 inch deep groove into the bottom side of the base. This groove will give the bolt head a place to ride in. Once the base is finished, I'll change back to the 1/4 inch spiral bit and cut the grooves in the fence and in the spacer. I'll glue and pin nail these 4 inch by 4 inch pads down to the adjustable fence. These pads are where the clamps are going to mount to. Now I can ease over all the edges and give all the parts a light sanding with some 220 grit sandpaper. After drilling a few pilot holes, I'm ready to install the clamps using some 3/4 inch wood screws. Now all that's left is to attach the fence and the spacer to the base using some 3 inch 1/4 20 bolts and some 1/4 20 turn screws I picked up from Lowe's. The spacer can be left out of the assembly or added depending on how thick the material that you're trying to cut is. The jig's adjustability turned out great. I can move it pretty easily into about any position I want to. I decided at the end to add a stop block to the end of the jig using just a scrap piece of oak that I had. And here I am making a test cut on the jig using a 2-inch piece of maple. This jig's going to be great for making tapers. I'm glad that I made it. It's much safer than the jig that I've been using. So if you thought that this project was useful, please hit like and subscribe. Thank you.